Hello, everyone. Welcome back to UFI Connects. I hope if you had a summer break, you enjoyed it. And I'm sorry that we're making you work so early for those of you in Europe and everybody in Asia. It's lovely to see you this morning. So we are back with our UFI Connects series. You will see this autumn things that you've told us you like. You like timely content, you like content where you're participating, and we are trying to keep you the most up-to-date with all of the trends of the industry. So that's what we'll be bringing you. If anybody here is new to UFI Connects, we will follow a format that will be 60 minutes. We will start with a little bit of a presentation, and then we will encourage you to ask questions of the speakers. Please put those into the chat window, and then somebody on our team will come to you and say, hey, we're going to put you off, we're going to take you off mute and let you ask your question of the panel. So that's the housekeeping items. And now I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers. Jochen Witt will be giving us a state of the industry. I know he is somebody that doesn't really need much of an introduction, but he is the president and CEO of JWC. Many of you will know him from when he was CEO of Cullen Mesa, and he is certainly a familiar face to the UFI crowd as he was European chapter chair for quite a while, as well as doing a turn as the UFI president. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Jochen Witt today.
Thanks, Caitlin. Is this now my turn? Okay, so let me start. I have a brief presentation. Hello to everybody. First of all, the presentation is about, I would say, 10% of the entire report we produce annually. And I tried to do it in 10, 12 minutes more I didn't have from Caitlin, so to have a lively discussion. The topic is basically state of the industry. And when I thought, oh, we can make that very, very short, even in 10 seconds. So I thought this is really the state of the industry. So Houston, we have a problem. Now I could stop here and say, that's it. But I think we will also try to find some ways forward, how we move forward and how we sort of try to do things. Now let's have a quick look back and say, okay, because that's basically what I said, Houston, we have a problem. This is the change from 2019 to 2020, and what you can see is that the entire industry has lost about 3/4 of the business in different regions, slightly different. For example, Asia is not as bad, mainly because of China. China was able to do to have some shows conducted, particularly after April 2020. But in average, we would say it's about 3/4 of the business which has been lost. This is now size-wise, from a revenue perspective, it is a little bit better because of some insurance proceeds, some down payments which have been kept by organizers, and then a little bit of digital revenue also came in. So the revenue side is slightly better than the picture you see here. What is interesting, though, is that if you look at the past 5 years, from 2015 to 2019, you see that here on the left side of the slide, you have a cumulative operating profit of the top 40 companies of about 9.4 billion euro. Now, 50% of that operating profit has been lost basically in 2020, and you can see that on the right side of the slide. The differences in those losses are significant. The reasons are, which I show you on the next slide, basically that a lot of non-cash relevant items had to be taken into account. You see, for example, here, Informa had, let's say, a charge for impairment of more than 700 million. Hive Group, the same, nearly 300 million, and Emerald, nearly 500 million. So that, of course, creates a picture where basically there are huge losses, but on the other hand, those losses are not really cash relevant, but of course they have an influence on the equity of those companies. And in that regard, Informa was able to successfully place a rights issue early in the crisis of 1 billion, and Hive did a similar rights issue, but at a lower level of 125 million pounds, and also very, very successfully, which shows also that the community believes in the business model, that the community thinks that once we get the pandemic under control, things will go into the right direction. If we go on, and here you see an overview of the top 20 companies, you see on the left side the operating profit in 2019, and on the right side you see basically the operating loss margin in 2020. And it is obvious that 2020 was, I would say, kind of disastrous year for the industry. And you see the operating margins or the loss margins significantly vary between the different companies, but they range basically from about 50% to nearly 300%. Of course, that is something which is really, really significant. Now, going forward, I think, how do we see the situation in the industry? And what we believe is basically that what is shown here on the headline of this slide is that the definition of must-attend event in the future will change. Just a brief explanation here. We have 5 bullet points. Each bullet point stands for a kind of show character. So the number 1 is regional shows, and the number 5 is highly international shows with large exposure to international participation. Now, when we look at the situation, what we see is a lot of travel restrictions, hesitancy of people to travel or companies to send employees to shows, also selectiveness of visitors and exhibitors to attend shows, or basically to say, okay, which shows do we really need to go to? Budget constraints and consolidation in many industries will result in what we think reduced visitor and exhibitor numbers, but also to a certain extent reduced booth sizes and reduced overall show sizes. If you, for example, look at consolidation in certain industries, which will take place, or which is already taking place, but will take place in the future, that's not of benefit to our industry, because our industry lives on fragmented industries, and the more consolidation there is, the worse it is for us. So in essence, that we believe, because of that situation, that particularly the international shows will take longer to recover. And what you see here is, when you look at the sort of on this slide on the dark red area, those are the areas where we see the highest impact of the pandemic. And those are particularly the international shows, the international so-called lead shows, which rely on a lot of bellwethers, which rely also on a lot of an extensive international participation. And that's how we see the situation evolve. So when we say the definition of a must-attend event will change, our view is that a must-attend event can also be an event which, let's say, has 250 exhibitors and 3,000 visitors. It can be a must-attend event for a certain industry, for a certain region. So it must not be, let's say, this large, huge lead event where people believe they have to go. So in essence, basically, we see a number of both strategic and operational topics which need to be addressed by organizers, but also venues. First of all, pricing needs to become fully value-based, because it needs to reflect the changing visitor patterns of our shows. The additional pandemic-related costs, it's an ongoing discussion, how to split those between organizers, venues, and of course, exhibitors and service providers, because there will be additional pandemic-related costs, which again will have a lot of pressure on the margins. The discussion about show cancellations and rescheduling need to be taken in due time in advance, because the experience we have seen with a number of organizers, when they decide too late, the exhibitors are really frustrated because they had spent already on show preparation. So that needs to be avoided. Portfolio needs to be restructured for better performance. We believe that particularly second and third tier shows need to be revisited. Do we want to keep them? Do we want to get rid of them? And we can see already in the market that a number of second and third tier shows have been discontinued. Insurance coverage is a big topic. And we know that, and we've researched that also, that a number of companies have received insurance proceeds during the pandemic. But whether that will be available in the future is an open question. I'm more than skeptical with regard to that. As a consequence, also general terms and conditions need to be adjusted. Reduced venue availability needs to be considered both by venues and organizers, because what we see is really now that show calendars will get mixed, and competitive shows sort of will move together and so on, and that needs to be addressed also. Last but not least, digital, we'll get to that later, will create a one face to the customer, or will be able to create a one face to the customer model, where we have both venues, organizers, and service providers as one face sort of to the customer. Now let's look ahead, and this is a little bit, I would say, content-rich slide, but what we see here basically is that the long-term outlook for our industry means that, in our view, our business model has to change. First of all, when you look at the left column, so to say, the business model, what we believe is that the face-to-face only model, at least to a large extent, will no longer prevail. So what needs to be done? We need to evolve our business model and move from I would say, mere face-to-face events companies to a facilitator of communication services, independent of time and independent of location and independent of medium. The long-term outlook will then be better customer experience, higher value to the clients. On the profitability side, next column, as I said before, we will have increased pressure on margins. We will see, let's say, a challenging external business environment, which means, again, portfolio restructuring. That's what I said before, reduction of administrative and potentially personnel costs, but also streamlining of operations. At the end of the day, the opportunity for the industry is that we will be more focused, more cost efficient, and more diversified and resilient. From an organizational perspective, what we have seen in many areas, that there was a brain drain of what we would say of the classical event managers, so they left the industry, and at the same time we saw that there was an insufficient use of data in the business process. So what we believe is that in the future we need to attract different kind of talent to our companies. We need to attract people who are IT savvy, who are data management savvy, who are savvy in artificial intelligence, which is a huge challenge for the industry. But that allows us, again, to be leaner, to be more efficient, and to serve our customers better. On the venue side, what we see also, too many venues which do no longer meet market requirements, too large venues. They need to sort of reflect that there is a changing market environment, and there needs to be an increased focus on venue quality, even if it comes at the expense of venue quantity. The question everybody must ask: do we really need 250, 300, 350, 400,000 square meters in our venues? That might be different in different regions. In China, it might still, we believe it's still relevant, but in countries like Europe or in the United States, it is questionable. Now, let's look at one country where we did a prediction. This is Germany. When you look at the left side of the slide, you see the development of the German trade fair industry over the last 10 years, something I've showed before. And what you see on the bottom is basically the 4 KPIs, net space, visitor, exhibitor, and show numbers, and you can see it has been stagnant over the last 10 years. So basically the German market is stagnant. There is nothing else to say. The revenue, where you see the 137 up there, that increased, and it grew, mainly because of the international business of the companies, partially digital business, and a little bit of the service business. Now, when looking forward, we worked on different scenarios, optimistic and expected, and a pessimistic scenario. And Caitlin, when we discussed this session before, said, did our forecast come true? And at least for Germany, and I think for most of Europe, it comes true. We believe that in Germany, we will have about 35% of the business in 2021. In 2022, the 70% of 2019 revenues might be a bit optimistic, But if things go well, we can achieve it. But still, we have to say things have to go well. It is not for sure. If we go on and let's take a look into China, it's quite interesting. China, in opposite to Germany and many other countries, has grown tremendously, which you see here on the left side of the slide from 2010 to 2019. So the capacity and the revenues have more than doubled. The net rented space, not entirely doubled, but close to it, and the number of shows has grown by about 50 percentage points. Yeah, what you see here basically is that revenues have increased strongly, whereas net rented space not to the same extent, which is an indication that organizers were able to increase prices, which is, of course, a reflection of a very, very strong market. On the right-hand side, you see something which we found very interesting. How did shows perform in the middle of the pandemic? And you see, yes, those shows which took place, they decreased in all major KPIs, but not to a large extent, which confirms our view that domestic market, and China is a domestic market, that domestic markets still perform quite well even in the pandemic. Now, let's move a little bit to digital now, because we believe that is one of the major topics we will see and we will have to face in the future. What we believe in is to say, okay, in the future, digital will on the one hand support the physical event, which you see on the left side, event-related technologies like smart badging, smartphones, exhibitor portals, smart venue solutions, and so on. This area will make show participation for visitors and exhibitors either more comfortable or more successful, or both, could be both. But on the right-hand side, we see something has to be added, and that's a platform-based business, basically with online matchmaking, punctual live interactions on demand, library, and so on and so forth. That part can elevate, let's say, a show's value proposition to something new and to something even much, much better. Now, at the core of everything is data and data synchronization, because we always say, at least at JWC, a trade fair only has two assets, and that's brand and data. And sometimes when we talk to organizers, I feel that they deal with their own data I would say, really say in gross negligence. And I would like to show that on the next slide. This is what we call, let's say, is a symbolized iceberg. And what you see here, there is a below the line area and above the line area, waterline area. Above the waterline area is basically what we deliver to our clients. And with great data, with good quality data, we can deliver to our clients a lot of things. I mean, we can pay, we can deliver intelligence, we can deliver matchmaking, we can deliver, let's say, supply and demand patterns. So we can really support our clients with much more value than we did before. But this only works if below the line areas, basically the iceberg concept as being below the line area has to be stable to support the above the line area. If the below the line area is stable, and below the line is basically data collection, data storage, integration, data protection, data analysis, and data control. And we've said that in quotation marks, data ownership. And data ownership has been discussed in our industry for quite some time. Our view always was we have to protect our data like a hen protects her egg. Personally, I would never give my data to any third party. This is the core asset of our industry, and our advice is very, very clearly, keep it with yourself, make sure that there is no access from a third party to your own data. Now let's move on to another topic in digitalization. A lot of discussion has been about monetizing digital. Yes, monetizing digital is important, but what we feel is that before we get to the point of monetizing, we have to make sure that whatever we do in the digital area supports the physical event. What we try to show here in this pyramid is to say, okay, digital can strengthen the customer relationship. It needs to support the physical event, and it may also help to acquire new clients to our show. And then if it, on top of that, if it provides any additional financial benefit, it's fine. But we have to get away from the notion that digital, needs to have a first priority in terms of monetizing that digital offerings. I think it's a little bit short-sighted, because if we focus on that and forget about our face-to-face event, we run the risk that the face-to-face event suffers. And we feel that whatever we do in the digital area, it should support the face-to-face event with a top priority. And if there is monetizing on top of it, it's fine, but it should not be the absolute first priority. Now, how do we see the digital in the future? Our view is it's what we call an omnichannel business model. Omnichannel means that all channels, face-to-face and digital, are integrated. They are not split. And what you see here is sort of an attempt to show that graphically. The light blue area is basically the virtual engagement, which takes place all year long, 365 days. You keep an engagement with your community, you create community. That can be content, that can be products, that can be matchmaking, a lot of things. And then you have the dark blue is basically the physical engagement, which can also happen basically in between. It doesn't need to have, let's say, only two time slots here. It could be 2 or 3 or 4, even 4 time slots. The main point is that both of those areas, digital and physical, need to be integrated with each other. Now, how does this omnichannel business model work? I make it very short. As we said, it needs to be integrated. It should not be split. If it is split, we talk about multi-channel. That's clearly not our advice, because it's not integrated. But what we also feel, it needs to take into account the region, it needs to take into account the industry, and it needs to take into account the show format. There has to be a difference. So we always warn that to say, okay, an omni-channel business model is not a model where we can apply a one-size-fits-all approach. It needs to be differentiated, and that's of course work, it's of course effort, it's of course money. But if we get it wrong, it doesn't help. So it needs to be sort of what we say individualized. And there's been a lot of talk about, does virtual and physical sort of cannibalize itself? We don't believe that. And we tried to show that with this slide here, where you say, okay, we have different kind of USPs when it comes to trade show. That's networking, that is learning and knowledge, that is transacting, and that's what we call other characteristics. And what we did here is to say, okay, when we look at networking, for example, shows social presence, of course, that's much better in a physical event. Yeah. But then if you go to other characteristics and say, for example, reach and attendee capacity, it could also be done very nicely through digital. So basically the message here is to say, okay, both physical and digital can complement each other. They are not really areas where we need to fear that they sort of cannibalize each other. And we try to show that through this slide. So let me come to the end. When it comes to digital, we feel that organizers would be well suited if they, let's say, consider 4 major areas before moving into digital. First of all, of course, know the specifics of your show, meaning review historical company and market related factors, but also review current touch points, very, very important, and potentially future touch points. Second point, know what your customers expect from your show. This is more industry related. This is, of course, also show, but you need to understand the industry. You need to understand basically what the industry expects. You need to understand also at what stage of digitalization the industry is, and how can you support it with own digital efforts. And then third point is know what on-site and online offerings your customers value and pay, because that is very, very important. If you have an integrated business model, you also need to think about the pricing to be integrated, and you need to understand basically how your customers value an integrated offering between physical and digital. Last but not least, design then a consistent customer journey, basically with all the touch points, with an integrated offering, and then finally with an integrated pricing. So I hope I didn't talk too much and too long. So this is the end, and now I'm happy and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Monica, if you wouldn't mind, would you share with us a little bit about what you're seeing in APAC and in China specifically, and just kind of give us some of your views?
Right. I think Jochen also touched on the Asia Pacific. And when you talk about Asia Pacific, I think in the last year or so, and it's about China. There's just not much going on in Asia Pacific other than shows are still going on since June 2020. There's events going on in Shanghai and in other city in China. Some of them are actually larger than before because people grab the opportunities to tap onto the local market. Interesting enough, China, if you look at a lot of the external communication, they said that they allow foreigners to come in with 14 days quarantine and 7 days of community health observation. But you do need a PU letter if you're not vaccinated. And what PU means, we don't know, but basically you need a letter, an invitation letter from the government officials. And that is very difficult to get if you're not vaccinated. And if you're vaccinated with the Chinese vaccine, then you don't need the invitation, but you still need a visa to come in. And yet there is, the bureaucracy and all these procedures. So you don't see a lot of foreigners in China, but international trade shows continue to run in China with the exhibits shipping into China and the local representative or the agency to stand on the booth to do the selling, but they're doing quite well. Only until the recent month in June, there's some cases starting to pop up in different cities in China. So immediately they respond as China's do, and they control it and they contain it, and they shows a stop. In Shanghai, the venues are still closed until most likely end of September, and then we'll see whether they open again. But China is vast. While Shanghai is closed, Guangzhou is still open, and some of other cities like Nanjing, they just announced another shows. So it's really depending on the city. But again, it's hard for foreign exhibitors or visitors to enter China. And you look at other country in China, in Asia, like Japan. Interesting enough, it is a nation of discipline, but this time with COVID, it has not really get it under control. In the last 18 months, it has been a lot of cases and has not been better. So in Japan, and they actually have forbidden foreign nationals to arrive from 162 nations, meaning nobody could visit Japan at this point. Well, fortunately enough, Hong Kong, China is not on that list, so we're subject to 14 days quarantine to go to Japan. But returning to Hong Kong is another story. So Japan is very much closed in lockdown. I mean, closed from other nations. The other one is Taipei. They've actually been under very good control. Taiwan has have very low number of infection only until the recent month. And you don't know, things could change overnight. And while Taiwan was very calm and safe, and suddenly in recent months, cases pop up. And because it has been so safe, they didn't think about vaccination. The vaccination rate in Taiwan is only 3.9%. I think it's the lowest in the whole of Asia Pacific. So suddenly they have shut it down. No foreign nations could arrive Taiwan as well. And with that shutdown, the border shut down, and the numbers come down very quickly as well. But we'll see when are they going to open up again. And as you know, that the vaccination is arriving in Taiwan from different places. So I think they're busy doing the vaccination at the moment. And I think until they feel safe again, the borders will not be opened. Korea the same, and it's like a yo-yo up and down. And then the recent cases has been down, and the FH daily confirmed cases is only under 2,000 daily. The vaccination rate is about just over 30%. But again, so they have different rules for different nations to arrive, and they also have a vaccination policy. Quarantine, compulsory quarantine policy for no less than 14 days from different regions, whether it's high risk, low risk, or medium risk. And Thailand as well. Thailand was good for a long time. So good they opened up Phuket and Pattaya, those holiday havens, for people to come in without quarantine. Whoever with full vaccination, they can go to these two beautiful areas in Thailand to have holiday without quarantine. But it's only lasts for a few weeks. And the cases surge again. And they're now having a daily cases of about 15,000. And so in Thailand, also the vaccination rate is about 11%, so it's not very high. So again, they put things under control, and they also, again, impose some of the traffic restrictions. Again, now come closer to home is Singapore. Singapore is actually a very free country, and they've been promoting that they now will live with the virus. So they also have set out some new policy. For people arriving in different nations, they have a different policy, but this is so comprehensive, and I myself even trying to understand. But in a nutshell, again, it's based on your vaccination status and the destination that you have spent in the last 14 days, and that they will, when you arrive, you have to have a negative test, and they will be subject to certain tests, and you'll be housed in a designated hotel for at least or no more than 48 hours until your tests proven negative. Then they will let you, go around the city, and you have to download an app that that they can trace wherever you are in case you get confirmed later. So it's not that too difficult. But again, there's a lot of paperwork, and you really have to read it through. The policy, and there's a website that you can key in where you're from, and they will guide you through. It is an interesting policy in Singapore. I must say that they're very innovative, but they also have reached nearly 80% vaccinated rate. So I think they also feel comfortable because of that, arguable that herd community level. As back to home in Hong Kong, we are pretty safe. For more than 70 days, we have no case. So we're very safe, people walking around, going to restaurants and coming to the convention center and attending different events. We just have a book fair in July, open for 7 days, attended by 730,000 visitors, 730,000 visitors in 7 days, which is quite a lot of people. So everybody wear the face mask, and we're very, very disciplined, but no food and drink is allowed on the trade show floor. Having said that, we also have a very strict border or immigration policy that we have now categorized different countries into high, medium, and low risk country. And also based on their vaccinated situation or status, that international travelers are subject to compulsory quarantine between 7 to 21 days. So, but however, with everything going on in the world, a lot of countries are in the top list. The only country other than China and Macau, the only foreign country that on the low risk list is New Zealand, in our book, in the Hong Kong book. So, but other than that, other people, most people are subject to 14 or 21-day quarantine. And subject to your vaccinated status. So, but the status changes all the time. In Hong Kong, we are stable because we basically close our border. In other country, it's up and down like a yo-yo. And in one day we thought we could welcome the British to come, and the other week, and suddenly they becoming on the high risk list, and we don't even allow any passenger plane to arrive from UK. So UK passenger plane could not land in Hong Kong at this time. And this decision only changed within 2 weeks. So it is a testing time for us, for the exhibition industry, for venue, for organizers. And because, one of our greatest strength is our planning skill, our organizing skill, and our skill to bring people together, to bring trade industry together to trade. But now we can't really trade, we can't really plan because of the unpredictable situation. And it is you can't plan even 3 months ahead of time when 3 months is not even enough to plan a recurrent event. So we're up against this, current situation.
Certainly, we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of everybody's in the same boat, and people were kind of very willing to forgive for we're postponing and we're changing plans and things like that. Now that you're seeing so much, I'm going to call it yo-yoing in the market, we're on, we're off, all of that. Are you seeing any trends kind of coming in where we have less patience from our customers, or has anybody come up with a particularly good strategy for dealing with that?
I think it depends on the situation. I mean, people are frustrated because it's been going on for so long, and on our book, and the scheduling is really challenging, because a lot of postponement, a lot of cancellations, and a lot of them really want to keep it going if there's any possibility. So we facilitate people to postpone the event, but there's only so much you can postpone within a year, because then you are messing up with your next year calendar. So we can only plan like 3 months, at the time. So we postpone it 3 months, we postpone it 3 months, we look at it and keep everybody informed. But in this crisis mode, we see more organizers, or at least a few major players in Hong Kong, are being more accommodating. And sometimes they're seeing that the other event, even competing event, are getting close to their original tendency. They're willing to work and collaborate with each other to facilitate, to at least let event to be held. Maybe the scale will consolidate, maybe both show will consolidate, but organizer are more willing to talk because we're on the same boat. We try to facilitate each other to hold the event, as long as this is not destructively competing with each other. So we see more people working with each other. Venue are playing a big role to mitigate and to bring different organizers together when the available window is getting narrower and narrower all the time. So yeah, we have to be flexible.
And I think it's certainly a positive to see how collaborative everybody has been and continues to be. Eduardo, I'm going to come to you in just a second here to kind of get your views on Spain and Europe, but also anybody, we'll welcome any questions you have for Jochen, for Monica, and for Eduardo. So please feel free to start putting them in the chat. Eduardo, can you share some views with us?
Well, I would like to say that we are on our way back. We are not still back, but we are on our way back, which is something quite positive compared to last year. So I think the situation is totally different from where we were in September last year. I think vaccination has done quite a lot, especially in Europe, where the rates are quite high. In Spain, yesterday, we reached to a 70% of the total population, but which is more, we have 90%, over 90% of the population over 40s, which are fully vaccinated. So that makes a real change, because that's real our focus on that. I think pandemics will also provide some opportunities. I think we have discovered, as Jochen said in his presentation, the power of digitization. I think we will be moving into more hybrid shows than what we had. And what I see is that most of the future shows will have a high content of digital parts. But also, we have discovered the power of face-to-face relations. And that's also very, very important, because we have seen, and especially talking to big companies, that they really need to have presential shows, as far as they need some human contact, which we cannot provide through video conferences or through all the digital platforms we're all building. Also, I think there are some trends, some changes in the future, especially on the design of stands, They will go more digital, more spacious in a way, and will be absolutely different from what they were. Also, the health measures that we will need to still keep implementing, at least for the next 2 years, such as face masks, limited capacities, security distance, or even these digital tickets that will come to stay forever. And the third point would be the sustainability. I think all the stands will have a sustainable mark from here to the future, which will also come to forever. And regarding the future, as I said, we are starting. I think the most important point, at least in Europe, is that especially sports, football. Now football, you have people attending stadiums, and that's great, because at the end, you see that that will be leading the situation for big movements of people. Situation, as Monica said before, is well, we change from 1 week to the other, but if we foresee the full trend, the situation is getting better and better every single week. And we hope that not just Europe, but the rest of the world will come as well. Still, we need to work on the global mobility, and that's something that needs to be achieved. I think European Union has done a great effort, especially with the EU digital COVID certificate, which will be compulsory, at least to get into some of the shows, or even to get through the customs in some countries. But that's a warranty also, for the people traveling, that you can make it easier than it was in the past, when you need to have the test, the PCR test, and everything, which was a full nightmare. And that also what made is that lots of people would not travel because of those restrictions or difficulties in getting it. So I think this last quarter will be very important in Europe. I think in all countries, we will be celebrating shows, for sure, not in the size they were in the past, but that will provide some comfort also for the people to see that it is possible and it is safe, which is the most important thing. And I would like to see next year, 2022, as the year of coming back fully to where we were. I know it's going to be difficult, and with all these restraints we'll have to have in the future. But I'm sure that if we are able to provide these shows in a way that we can see that they are safe, also they are efficient also for the people, because most of the big companies, their budgets, their marketing budgets are still there. And if we see that it's more efficient to spend it on shows, and then we will make it. But we are in this moment in which we are not yet there, but we are close to it.
So Jochen had spoken a little bit earlier about kind of what a must-attend show is changing. And then you just talked about a lot of hybrid content starting to become really online, and that being a continuing trend. And of course, everybody wants to talk about omnichannel and things like that. Is this something that we are leading with our customers, or is this something that we are reacting to? And do you have any thoughts or kind of advice on how we talk to our customers about the fact that these formats have changed, that we're doing things differently? Or is that we don't need to, because we're doing it in response to their needs?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a need, for the people. I don't know, Jochen, if you want to add for it, but it is a need. But it's true that I think we've gone forward to it, and we started to provide these new platforms. I think that our customers, they really hate now to be contacting through Zoom, big even tech companies now, at least in Europe, they started to say that as from the second week of October, they will be coming back to their offices, to their headquarters, to work physically there and not at home. And that's something that will come. Of course, there's a new trend, and you will have some days working at home and some days working at the office. But what was said to be that everybody would work in the future just from home, I think that's not going to happen, because we see there are lots of difficulties as well, especially in making teams. It's very difficult, if you join one person that you won't be seen physically, to provide, the culture of the company and all of that. So I think we are taking the lead, but still we need to listen much more to the real needs of our customers.
Thanks, Eduardo.
Yeah, perhaps I add something to that. In our view, the question of digital is not really a technical question; it's a strategic question. And as I tried to explain in the presentation, when it comes to digitalizing our offering, we believe that there is no clear picture between a push and a pull strategy. What we always have to look at is what our customers need. So there are differentiating factors which need to be taken into account. First of all, what do our direct show customers need? What do they want? Second point is really then to say, okay, what is going on in the respective industry our show serves? That is also very different. We have industries which are fairly advanced in digitalization. We have other industries which are not so much advanced. And then you look at also at the region. Just to give you an example, in certain regions of Asia or of Africa, you will definitely have to use another digital approach than, for example, in areas of the United States or Europe. So these factors all drive our digital strategies. The most important thing is that we have to get away from this notion of digital exhibitions or monetizing digital events. I think as long as we do that, we will not be successful. We have to take an integrated approach where the digital is complementing the physical, and that both together is taking place 365 days a year. Again, depending on the show, depending on the industry, but depending on the region. If we do that, we believe that our industry will really rebound very, very strongly. If we move more to the other side and focus more on the F2F business, or for example, say we create, instead of a face-to-face event, we create a digital event and leave it with that, then I don't think we will have a very prosperous time ahead of us.
Thanks, Jochen. Sammy, you had sent me a question, so if you would like to come on, and you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question now if you'd like.
Thank you very much, Kathleen, and good morning, everyone. I had a question regarding to one of Jochen's comment with regards to floor pricing that would have to be adapted to the new visitor profile and the new show profile. Can you elaborate a little bit, perhaps either Jochen or the audience, on how you see floor pricing developing for the 22 editions in particular and in the longer term? Thank you very much.
I mean, that's a truly important point. Now, I'm far away from giving you any indication on 2022 floor pricing, because again, that depends which industry you're in, what show you have, which region you are. The point we try to make is to say, okay, let's look at the current situation. And the amazing thing for us is now that our highly predictable industry has become highly unpredictable. And what does it mean basically for exhibitors if they want to attend a show? Let's take a very international show in one of the European countries with, let's say, 10% overseas visitors and 40% foreign visitors. Now, if it is unsecure whether that visitorship will attend the show, then we believe that that needs to be reflected in the pricing, because otherwise exhibitors will be very hesitant to say, okay, I attend. Yeah. And you know, Sami, that we at JWC, we have been advocating value-based pricing for more than 10 years, and we worked a lot on that. This is nothing else than a consequence of value-based pricing to say, okay, if the value for the exhibitor changes, and the value changes if there is less international participation, then this needs to be reflected in the pricing. Of course, again, this is nothing where we can say now 2022, the prices will be reduced or whatever. That needs to be individualized, specified from show to show. Is that answering your question?
Great, thank you. The next question we'll go to is from Matt Pierce. Matt, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Hi. Yes, look, greetings from Australia, where we've taken our restrictions to the North Korean model. So we're just locked down and not likely to come out anytime soon. But what's very clear is that, what's clear is that everything, so we've got no more events this year, it just won't happen. So we're all looking for 22. So two things that are happening. The venues are all full for next year, happy days for them. But the contractors have got no staff at the moment. They've all laid them off. Will they come back? And so we've heard from our colleagues here around what's happening with venue side and also what's happening with the organizers. But really, where are we at with contractors around the world? HR and personnel are all dropping off. We've never been a particularly friendly environment for contractors anyway. So I just wondered what the experiences are.
Perhaps I answer that also, because yesterday I coincidentally have been at the Caravan Salon in Düsseldorf, which has been an amazing experience for me personally, because there were nearly 20,000 visitors at the show, and with the management of Messe Düsseldorf and also with other organizers, we discussed exactly that point, Matt. And I think it depends a little bit on where you are in this area, in the areas of the world. If we look into Europe, particularly Germany, but I think also UK and other European countries, we have that so-called furlough scheme, where basically contractors but also organizers could furlough their stuff in a way to say, okay, the state, the country, the government is taking care of at least up to 90% of their salaries. Now, in those countries, it is, I would say, fairly uncomplicated to have those employees return either to the contractors or also to the organizers. In areas where you had to lay off those people, we see that it is much, much more complex, and that particularly on the contractor side, a lot of people have left the industry. They've looked for other industries because they felt the industry is too volatile, and that makes it very, very difficult and basically to rehire those people and to have the contractors on place again. Yeah.
If I may share on this part of the world, the same thing. I mean, there's so little show going on until the last few months that we have more larger size consumer fair. The contractors are really suffering, and it's quite hard for them to survive without any shows. You know, they move on to decorators and to security, to retail and all that. So we're also worried when business return that not only the contractor, but also the caterers are gone. You know, the waiter and waitress have given up, you know, because there's not enough business in the restaurant and all that. At the moment, in the industry in Hong Kong, we're lobbying the government to repurpose the subsidies. The government have put aside a fund to subsidize the non-government run exhibitions, subsidize 100% of the venue rental for all the exhibition, may it be trade shows or consumer fair, until June next year. But there's only for events that can be held that the government will subsidize the rental. I mean, over 100, near 200 exhibition has been canceled since last year. So they cannot be benefit. And this funding is sitting there idle. And we need that fund now to help those companies. may it be organizer and contractor. So we're actually lobbying with the association, we're lobbying the government to repurpose that fund to give a timely relief to those people, you know, for them to pay salary or pay rent and all that. And we're still working on it, and we have, you know, meeting directly. So that need to be done. And I appreciate, you know, Matt also care about the downline, the supplier chain, you know, that many of them also suffer. So for the same reason, I'm not crazy about the digital show, because, you know, as the exhibition industry goes, we also bring economic impact to many other industry. I mean, including the contractor, the design company, the security company, the caterer, and you name it, the logistic company and all that. And I'm also going for hybrid, but not hybrid with digital and face-to-face, but trade and public, trade and consumer. For now, because, you know, so little foreign visitors could come into Hong Kong, we're working only with our local economy. So we're working with organizers who normally only run the B2B show. They're now running trade and consumer fair. So as Jochen also showed earlier, they have to look at the portfolio, and you know, we have to be flexible at this time during this crisis. So some of the trade events are now becoming trade and public. You know, one of the successful one, you know, Michael is here. We run jewelry fair. It used to be you know, B2B. Now it's B2C. Thank God for the women. You know, we we fully support that. And but there are other trade show as well. And hopefully we just, as we're talking, the government in Hong Kong, we're talking about opening up some region from China, allowing the non-Hong Kong citizen from China to come to Hong Kong. So hopefully with that opening up, we would have a bigger economy to work on in the coming near future.
Thanks, Monica. Paul, you have put in a question that was related to kind of where we started with that. Did you want to add in anything more about some of the HR changes and challenges?
Well, firstly, good day, and thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. To put it into context, my daughter has a degree in event management and was working in the industry before the pandemic. She got furloughed, then laid off, and moved to IT recruitment. And only this week, she was being offered a role, not in the same B2B industry, but something similar, which was as a wedding planner. And the salary was attractive. However, she decided, because the industry's still unstable, to stay in the IT recruitment business. So my question is based around that and similar to Matt's. There have been a lot of people that have moved out of the industry, and should the recovery begin, are our companies in a fit state to begin to redeliver when the demands increase? And do we have the headcount in our offices to do a competent job? And how are we going to win those people back into the industry and, like my daughter, give them some comfort that there is a long-term career?
Ooh, I think that sounds like an entire session, but Jochen, if you want to give a quick response to that, and then
Paul, there is no quick. I don't think there is a quick response to that. And again, I think it is different from country to country. In Germany, for example, I don't perceive this to be a very, very big problem because of the very generous furlough scheme we have here. In other countries, it is. And definitely, it's a huge challenge for those countries where you had a lot of layoffs and people are, I would say, unsecure about the future of our industry, the volatility of our industry. They've experienced it once, and yeah, what we hear, basically, a lot of them said, yeah, it's volatile. So if I have a stable environment, I prefer to be there, even though my salary might be below what I had before. So I believe for a lot of companies, and that's also what we hear from them, it is a huge challenge to I would say, move back to normal operation mode in terms of rehiring people. At the same time, there is another challenge being added to that, which I feel is at least of a similar complexity, and that is the addition of digital natives, like IT-savvy employees who are familiar with data management, who are familiar with artificial intelligence, and they need to be. That's at least our philosophy. They need to become of the integral part of the team. Yeah, and that's another huge challenge. So on the one hand, we have those people which we want to rehire. On the other hand, we have totally new characters, totally new personalities, which will change our company culture also. So putting those together, I think the challenge is very, very high.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm sorry, folks. I think we're coming to the end of our session here today. Unfortunately, as always, or maybe fortunately, I've got questions a mile long here, but I don't think we're going to have time for them. So if I can just say thank you very much to our speakers today here. And if I can share my screen intelligently. As always, we will be having more UFI Connects coming up, so make sure you're watching out for that. But the much more exciting thing, the thing that we are all looking forward to, is a live face-to-face in-person event. Beginning of November, we'll have the UFI Global Congress. So please make sure you are registered for that. Jochen will be on stage giving us more updates, and we will have more great content. As well, our friends at the ETT Club will be starting up their sessions again for the autumn, the first one on the 7th of September. And as always, thank you very much to all of our diamond sponsors, Thailand, TSEB, Qatar, Shenzhen World, and Freeman. And thank you to all of you for joining us today.